Hi, this is Mac Thornberry. Thanks for joining me for another edition of the video Mailbox. I've been getting a fair amount of mail, emails, and phone calls lately about UN-related issues. For example, this week I have an email from Jack in Wichita Falls about the Law of the Sea Treaty. Jack writes that I'm writing to express my strong opposition to U.S. ratification of the Law of the Sea Treaty, otherwise known as LOST, L-O-S-T. This dangerous treaty not only takes away American sovereignty and imposes taxes on American citizens, it's simply unnecessary. Well, Jack, I have been getting a fair amount of mail on this Law of the Sea Treaty. I should say, first of all, that as a member of the U.S. House, we do not play a role in voting one way or another on treaties. Under the Constitution, it's the Senate that has to ratify treaties with an extra 2/3 vote in order to ratify a treaty. So I won't be voting directly one way or another on this particular treaty. But it has gotten a lot of interest in the public. This treaty was first signed in 1982. And at that time, President Reagan thought that it was not in our national interest for the U.S. to sign or have it ratified. Since then, there have been a few changes to the provisions, and the U.S. has voluntarily complied with most of the provisions of the treaty. But recently, there's been a big push by a bunch of former secretaries of state and others to have the U.S. Senate formally ratify the treaty so that the U.S. joins the other nations who have done that. This is a rather complicated treaty. It deals with mining rights for minerals under the sea, on the ocean floor, and other such things. My view is that it may make sense to try to differentiate who has what rights in what situations. But I think we always have to be very careful about giving up any U.S. sovereignty, and particularly, as Jack writes, if it means higher costs or indirect taxes for U.S. citizens, then I'm not so sure it's a very good idea. I think there's still enough question, at least, on the Law of the Sea Treaty to mean that we ought to take it slowly, and I hope the Senate does not go ahead and ratify it this year, that we really explore all of the ins and outs on what it would mean to us and what we have to gain by ratifying this treaty. I think that's the big question, which Jack points out, and it's one that I still have in my mind as well. On another UN issue, I have an email from Kathy from Canyon, who writes that I'm writing in regard to information I received that stated President Obama is trying to bypass the normal legislative process by signing international treaties on gun control, and that the Obama administration intends to force gun control and a complete ban on U.S. citizens. Please let me know if this is true. Well, Kathy, I have no doubt that there are people in the Obama administration, perhaps including the President himself, who wants to have more gun control leveraged on U.S. citizens, who want to take away some of those Second Amendment rights that the Supreme Court has now held belongs to each individual citizen. Now, there is something in the UN called the Arms Trade Treaty, and that's mainly about exporting and importing of conventional munitions, such as for militaries and so forth. And so that has not been negotiated. There's not a formal treaty on it. We don't know exactly what that's going to amount to. But I think there is some, at least, suspicion that this could change into something that would affect the rights of ordinary Americans. We can't say that for sure. What we can say for sure is that the U.S. Constitution cannot be changed by a UN treaty of any kind. So that those Second Amendment rights that each of us have to keep and bear arms is very valuable, very important, and no administration can sign those rights away. Now, I agree we got to be vigilant, because whether it is directly through Congress or indirectly through regulations or even maybe through some treaty, there will be efforts to chip away at those Second Amendment rights. But from my standpoint, I will make sure that I do everything I can to ensure that those Second Amendment rights are protected. They are too important to this country, to the freedoms we have, to let any of these ways encroach upon them. That's all I have for this week. We'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks for joining me on the Video Mailbox.